Okay, good morning. I'm glad everyone is here. I'm glad everyone is here today to hear a report. And again, just a reminder, the team was Kristina Arellano, Debby Lorenz, Pastor Ken, and myself. And we'd like to say a special thanks to Chris Bartelt, Kim Bratz, Deb Cooley, John Neville, Mary Robatka, and Debbie Zorn for their extra help, and sometimes a lot of extra help on things. Our purpose was to gather data from the last roughly 20 years and look at who we were, who we are as a church, and then use this information to help us consider our future at First Presbyterian. So our mission field, after being approved by session, the Congregational Mission Study Team met for the first time on June 8th. We identified 4 areas that were just on the screen of what we wanted to, I think it's in it. No. There we go. That we wanted to look at to help with our data gathering. What we wanted to look at is our church past, roughly 2000 to present, or the time that we moved into this new church. Our Fond du Lac community, where do we think God wants us to go? And what attributes are we looking for in our next pastor? On July 17th, we introduced the team members of the congregation, informed them about the 4 areas that we were going to be looking at, and listed our time frame. The first information session was presented afterward or during worship on July 31st. Church statistics, including membership, attendance, staffing, services and educational opportunities, ministry activities, and budgeting. Community information covered a wide range of information on Fond du Lac, including educational, employment, religious, and recreational offerings that the community has, as well as an overview of our population in Fond du Lac. At the end of this presentation, we handed out a survey that was to be completed and returned by August 14th. There was also an option to complete the survey online. After this date, the team tallied the results and presented them to the congregation on August 28th. On September 25th, you might remember, we had one of the exercises in discerning direction in which we feel God wants us to go. And then on October 9th, we had another discerning exercise, considering what attributes we want our next pastor to have. And this is now the wrap-up presentation from the work that we've done. The finished Congregational Mission Study report will be presented to the session shortly, and they'll review it and approve it, and then it'll then be sent to the COM at Presbyterian, and if approved by them, or when approved by them, it'll be posted online for prospective pastors to search and see if they'd like to come by us. Again, Debby Lorenz was a very active part of this team, and what I'm going to present next is her summary of things. Is she focused again on the city of Fond du Lac itself, and this is a brief summary. Fond du Lac has a rich history dating back to the 1600s. Native Americans and immigrants made it what it is today. Territorial governors James Doty and Nathaniel Talmadge helped to build the city by organizing railroads and schools and building roads linking Fond du Lac with other nearby towns. Fond du Lac was also a stop on the Underground Railroad. We are a small city with a population of just over 44,000 people. We are centrally located to the larger cities of Milwaukee, Madison, and Green Bay. Fond du Lac is mostly a conservative community, with the majority being Republicans. Fond du Lac is growing in its diversity. 60 years ago, there was one Black family in town and some migrant families. Today, 8% of the population of Fond du Lac is Hispanic, 3.6% are Black, and 1.4% are Asian or Pacific Islander. There are many opportunities for employment with several major employers in Fond du Lac. Some of the major employers are Merck Marine, Quad Graphics, JF Ahern, Michaels Corporation, and then SSM and Aurora employ many people in the healthcare field. It's recently been announced that both Theta Care and Freighter will be building new hospitals in Fond du Lac and in Oshkosh. Each hospital will have emergency care, inpatient beds, and 24/7 coverage. Project completion is expected by 2024. The employment rate in Fond du Lac is 62%, with an average earning of $38,320. The Fond du Lac School District enrolls about 7,000 students. There are 10 public elementary schools, 4 public middle schools, and 2 public high schools. And there are several church-affiliated schools as well. 35% of the student body is economically disadvantaged and qualify for free or reduced lunch. The poverty rate in Fond du Lac is at 11.6%, whereas Wisconsin's poverty rate is at 10, so we're a little bit higher there. There are many resources available for individuals. These resources also provide opportunities for volunteering. Some examples of resources open to volunteering are the Hospice Home of Hope, Broken Bread, Loaves and Fishes, Fondy Food Pantry, Salvation Army, and Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And Debbie wanted to share some of her experiences with volunteering for Sleep in Heavenly Peace. She says, the first time Andy and I helped with a delivery, we delivered to a family that had 3 children. The 8-year-old had never had a bed to sleep in. When we arrived, he was in his jammies, and once his bed was built and the bedding put on, he climbed in and absolutely refused to get out. That was his bed. Little excitement on his part. Another time that we helped with a delivery, it became a neighborhood affair. Children offered to help, and the curious had come to check it out. There was a lot of support from the neighbors during that delivery. Many of the above-mentioned resources accept monetary donations of food, clothing, or items for bedding. In the past, our church has been extremely generous in giving donations for these special donation pledges that they have. Fond du Lac is home to 57 different churches. Catholic, Lutheran, Baptist, Methodist, and Pentecostal are among them. Interesting fact is that between 2000 and 2015, the Presbyterian Church in the United States decreased their membership by about 40%. Catholic baptisms were down by 34%, and ELC down by 40%. Pentecostal church membership has been increasing each year. There are many recreational and cultural opportunities in the Fond du Lac area. Hiking, biking, boating, and music venues are available year-round. For sports enthusiasts, Fond du Lac has its own collegiate baseball team, the Dock Spiders. Green Bay is home to the Green Bay Packers, and Milwaukee is home to the Brewers and the Bucks. And the capital, Madison, is home to the Wisconsin Badgers, which I have to say, when I mentioned that to Debbie, she said, "Are they a football team?" Yes, and they play well, even when it's rainy and very windy. And then the last slide that we have for Debbie is Fond du Lac has many wonderful things to offer, but it is also a city with a higher poverty rate compared to the rest of the state, and therefore offers many opportunities for involvement in ministry. Now I will become Jolene. Is that 10? Okay. And again, my part initially was to look back at about 20 years at numerous areas, including our membership and attendance, what were worship opportunities, what educational offerings were there, what was our staffing pattern, and what was the financial picture of our church. And then this information was compared to statistics from today. Membership in, there we go. Membership in 2000 was 582, and the average weekly attendance was 300. In 2022, membership is 318, and average weekly attendance is 85. Because of the COVID pandemic, we also wanted to compare numbers from 2019, prior to the pandemic, and see if that would help us understand what effect the pandemic had on our church. So when we looked at 2019, membership was at 338 and the average weekly attendance was 121. So from the numbers, it's showing that most of the decrease in membership and attendance was before the pandemic had any effect. And we're hoping that now that the pandemic is becoming less of an issue, that perhaps our weekly attendance will go up also. In 2000, there were 12 paid staff members at First Presbyterian Church. We now have 5 paid staff members, which include pastor, director of Christian ed, worship coordinator, financial assistant, communications coordinator, and then there's a contracted custodial crew as well. Weekly services in 2000 consisted of a Saturday evening service and 2 Sunday morning services. The radio ministry was presented weekly on KFIC on Sunday mornings. Currently, there is 1 Sunday morning service, which is also live streamed, and the radio ministry continues on KFIC radio. In 2000, there were 179 children birth to 18 years on the church roll for Sunday school. Sunday school classes were held on Sunday morning between the 2 services. We couldn't find an actual number on how many children attended on a weekly basis, but we can be pretty sure that not that many did. And there was also PYA that was offered for junior and senior high kids, and there was a children's choir at the time. Currently, we have 24 children birth to age 18 on the Sunday school roll. And Sunday school is held after the Sunday service at the same time that the adult education classes are held. PYA is still available, and we can see from the numbers then that we're definitely an aging congregation. Adult education classes, now called the Adult Faith Formation, were offered on some Sundays in 2000. There were discipleship classes that were available intermittently during the week. In 2000, there were 31 adult attendees throughout the year for these offerings. Currently, in just the first half of the year, we had already had 42 attendees at Sunday morning classes, at the Lenten Bible study, and several book studies that were given. So it's encouraging that even though our church membership is down, there's more participation in the adult faith formation. First Presbyterian has always been involved in many ministry activities, both locally, nationally, and internationally. In 2000, there were 38 different activities that our church was involved in. In 2019, again, looking at before the pandemic, we were involved in 36. And as of August of this year, we'd already been involved in 24, which several more have come up since. So I think we're doing pretty well as far as ministry involvement. And the final area that was looked at was the church's budget. In 2000, the income was $372,201, and expenses were $419,146. In 2021, the last complete year we have data for, income was $314,000 and expenses were $390,235. In summary then, since 2000, First Presbyterian membership has dropped by 45%. So about the same percentage that was observed nationally. Attendance has decreased by 73%. Staffing was decreased by 60%. Income to the church has dropped by 15%, but expenses have dropped only 7%. And this last fact means that even though expenses have decreased, income has dropped by a larger percentage. There are several implications for the future of First Presbyterian Church. At our current rate of spending, within 2 to 3 years, our checking, savings, stock assets account will be depleted. And this does not include the endowment fund. That's totally separate from the church budget itself. This is the money in the checking, savings, stock assessment that is used to cover budget deficits and also to cover building maintenance projects that arise. Some of the more expensive future projects include replacing carpeting in the entire church, which would be estimated now at about $23,000. Blacktop resurfacing of the parking lot at $130,000. Furnace replacement, which would be $128,000 if all 8 furnaces go at one time. And flat roof replacement in 3 to 5 years at about $50,000. And this means that we cannot continue our current financial trajectory without a significant increase in giving. As we rebuild our ministries post-pandemic, we need to keep in mind that we only have 27% of the attendance that we did in 2000 and only 35% of the paid staff. Quite simply, we have less staff and fewer members available to accomplish our work and ministry goals.
Good morning. My name is Kristina Arellano, and I'm going to summarize the results of our Congregational Mission Studies survey that was conducted back in August. The survey consisted of 47 questions. 87 people responded, which is very close to the average Sunday attendance of 85 people. In August, I shared many details that we learned from the multiple choice questions on the survey. And today, I'm going to review some of those facts, plus share insights we gained by reading all the written comments. All the written comments were reviewed, organized, and typed into a separate 24-page report. These results were compared to the sticker visioning exercises that were conducted over the past month. There were 3 main points expressed in the written comments of our survey. Point number 1. The number 1 reason people began attending our church and continue to attend our church is for the relationships they have made. This trend was documented in the numerous written comments throughout our survey and during the 3 sticker visioning exercises conducted during our worship services. We can have the most amazing ministry opportunities and activities, but what it ultimately boils down to is this. The most important thing we can do as a church is help people feel wanted, cared for, and know that they have made friends in our church. As a church, most of us feel we are doing a good job, although there were a few comments with suggestions to improve this area. 5 people mentioned improvement in this area would help us become more attractive to potential new members. However, overall, we think of ourselves as very strong in the area of friendliness and welcoming. Point number 2. Both the survey results and the visioning exercises show there is a strong interest in growing ministries to the children and youth. However, survey questions regarding volunteerism interests showed there wasn't a strong interest in volunteering for those ministries. Based on survey results, we are concerned about how we will rebuild the children and youth ministries without sufficient volunteers. The final main point learned from our survey comments was this. Music has been getting a fairly low number of votes in our sticker visioning exercises. However, when our survey asked what would make our church more attractive to potential new members, improving the music program was the #1 concern people listed. There's clearly a bit of a mismatch between survey results and the visioning exercises. While the visioning exercises appear to place music as a low concern in our congregation, there's a viable portion of our congregation that desires to rebuild and improve our music program. Next, I would like to review our church's strengths and weaknesses. Overall, there are 4 main weaknesses that stood out in our research. Weakness #1. Attendance and membership has significantly declined since 2000. Before COVID, our numbers matched the nationwide membership and attendance statistics. Most churches have been in decline over the past few decades. Post-COVID, there is not enough information to determine how we compare to national averages. Weakness #2. Only 19% of us invite people to church. Upon making this discovery, conversation has been ignited regarding how we can change these numbers and reignite interest and courage to breach the topic of church with our friends and neighbors. Weakness #3. We are coming to grips with the fact that we haven't been as good at volunteering as we thought we were. Volunteerism interests gathered during the survey will be passed on to the various ministry teams in the church. This information should help the teams discover missed opportunities for recruiting volunteers. For example, there are currently only a few people doing all the groundskeeping, but several people on the survey said they were interested in helping with this activity. And weakness #4. Finally, our expenses versus income are off balance. This is most strongly seen in our staffing expenses. Unfortunately, our church will have to make some difficult decisions regarding the budget and staffing in order to avoid exhausting all our financial reserves over the next few years. While much of this information sounds bleak, we acknowledge that we are a congregation blessed with many resources and dedicated members that know how to work together to solve our problems. Unfortunately, our church has many strengths. Even if we're not able to maintain current staffing, the remaining staff would place our ratios of staff to attendees way above national averages. We have a mixed income church with individuals who make well above the Fond du Lac average, as well as many who make well below the Fond du Lac average. As a result, we have members who know how to minister across all levels of economic barriers. We are a very generous church. Whenever opportunities arise to support local missions through donations of items or monetary support, members quickly arise to the occasion. We are a well-educated and skilled church with education levels well above national averages. We are resourceful. As Pastor Ken says, we are one of the most creative congregations he's ever met. We have an amazing building and property that we are blessed to be able to share with the community. We have a strong relationship with many community organizations. And most importantly, we have a congregation that really cares about its church. We have a strong desire to love and support our members. The most popular word used in our survey respondents to describe our church is welcoming. In summary, these are our final recommendations for our church. We recommend that the church create a balanced budget that will support our financial ministries for years to come. We realize that this may mean adjusting our current staffing ratios. And while this is a very difficult subject, we are highly concerned that putting off this decision for long will produce dire consequences for our congregation within the next 2 to 3 years. Gratefully, we are still in a good financial position to have options that will allow us to recover from the setback and potentially regrow the church ministry. In contrast, if we delay this decision for long, options may be taken from us, and we may be forced to make decisions out of a crisis mode of thinking. We recognize that crisis decision-making often produces unwanted or less desirable results. Secondly, we recommend holding a pledge drive that focuses on both financial giving and donation of time. If we are able to sufficiently increase financial donations, we may be able to offset some of the budgeting problems and lessen the impact on our upcoming staffing decisions. And now that the church is aware of the lack of sufficient volunteerism, holding a time pledge drive will help us determine our level of commitment to potential future ministries. This knowledge will help our incoming pastor, staff, and ministry leaders plan how they can best use their time and talents. Finally, we recommend that the church facilitate discussion during adult faith formation to examine why we are afraid to invite people to church. Perhaps a portion of the time can be spent in brainstorming ways we can creatively invite our friends, neighbors, and the community. In conclusion, we are grateful that the church was able to conduct this congregational mission study. While we will need to make some difficult decisions over the next year, we are still early enough in the process that we have options. We can become any church we decide to be. While our past informs our future, it does not decide our future. While our past informs our future, it does not decide our future. Thank you.
So I'm going to be talking about those things that I did with you about where are we going and who should lead us. So you remember, I was amazed you formed lines and went around in what, a clockwise motion, like who do you think you are? Presbyterians, being decent and orderly or something like that? If I could have the next one, please. This is probably my favorite picture of Agnes voting. Agnes had to show Dan Baker how to vote. I think Dan cheated a little bit. If you haven't met Agnes, that's because you're not paying attention to our Facebook page. Agnes is the mascot who lives in the church office. We invite you to stop by her and see her sometime. Next one, please. And you remember these huge lists. And I want to thank the team and their minions for doing such a good job of tabulating all those stickers, getting the numbers, getting them up there in place. So with that said, as you know, over the course of 2 Sundays, the team held 3 visioning exercises during the worship time. The first exercise drew on a paraphrased version of the 6 great ends of the church. And we were instructed to choose the 3 ends we thought were the most important for us as a church going forward, which were the 3 we felt God wanted us to put most of our time and energy into. Survey said this: our top concern, as you can see, is clearly caring for individuals, followed closely by worship, with proclamation rounding out the top 3. Note these 3 are somewhat evenly spaced and lend themselves to fostering personal relationships. The bottom 3, which lend themselves more to action on a larger scale, are closer together. These results indicate that we as a church believe the bulk of our effort should be spent on caring for individual relationships and fostering community. Of course, none of these ends can ever stand alone. They are all intertwined, each depending on all the others. When we worship regularly, we are safeguarding spiritual and moral standards. Proclaiming the good news of salvation moves us towards providing for the physical and spiritual needs of individuals. Being the visible kingdom of heaven on earth requires advocating for social justice and proclaiming the good news of salvation. The individual rankings tell us what our priorities are, but none of them can be avoided altogether. We may concentrate on a few, but each of them needs our attention. Now, in the second exercise, which you will remember took place on that same day. In the second exercise, we were given a list of 10 items we either talk about, spend money on, or invest energy into. In this case, we were asked to choose the 5 items we think are most important for us as a congregation moving forward. Which are the 5 items we feel God wants us to put the most time and energy into? Survey said this: the top 4 responses, separated by only 7 votes, suggest a strong inward focus and concern for our future. Given the results of the previous exercise and the results of the large survey that Kristina helped us with, this is not surprising. But as with the great ends of the church, none of these can stand alone. They are all interconnected. We say we want new members, but visitors are never going to enter a church that looks like a vacant lot. We have to put resources into landscaping. A well-maintained church lifts everyone's spirits, but a church with maintenance issues looks like no one cares about it. Think about it. You really want to invite people to your home when the roof leaks over your dining room table. You don't want to do that, right? Music. Music creates a sense of unity and enhances our worship. And I got to say, I thought it went very well today, especially during the communion prayer. It enhances our worship. We want our children and youth to grow in faith. But where do they spend most of their time? It's not with us. It's with their adults in their lives. If we want children to grow in faith, then we need to help their adults grow in faith also. Again, the individual rankings reveal our priorities, but none of them can be avoided altogether. Each item needs at least some attention. Now, in the third exercise, the team presented 20 desired pastoral skills or attributes. We were instructed to choose the 10 items we think are the most important for our next pastor. Which are the 10 we feel are most important for us going forward? Which are the 10 our next pastor will most need to guide us in the direction we believe God wants us to go? And again, the survey says this. Perhaps not surprisingly, the results indicate our greatest desire is for a strong preacher worship leader. I've never pastored a church that said, no, that can go near the bottom. Every church wants Billy Graham in their pulpit on Sunday mornings. This person will also be a skilled communicator, both oral and written, who can motivate and encourage us. Additionally, this individual must have a keen interest in families with young children. Anyone without these qualities would be hard-pressed to guide us in the direction we believe God wants us to go. Items 5 through 11 are secondary but still important expectations. The fact that these 7 items are separated by only 6 votes suggests they are of practically equal importance. Together, they suggest a minister with traditional pastoral skills who especially desires to be with us, both ministering out in our community and navigating the sometimes sensitive realities of our world today. Items 12 through 14, separated by only 1 vote, are important, though in this case tertiary, pastoral gifts expected in a well-rounded solo pastor. We still expect them, and they matter to us, but less than those listed above. Now, a word of warning here. Notice, Heart for Older Adults comes in at number 14. Children and Young Families ranks much higher, number 4. But who is the demographic that is going to be the first to complain that the pastor is not spending enough time with them? Who is the first to say they are being neglected? It is always the retired members. In every church I've been in, it is the retired members who say the pastor isn't spending enough time with us. Yes, the pastor will need to visit the nursing homes and the shut-ins, yes. But these results tell us we want the pastor to know that those folks come second to children and young families. So the pastor can prioritize one or the other, but not both. And we need to be comfortable with that. Heart for Music Ministry, number 15. We know music is important to us. We saw that in the large survey. Its relatively low ranking here, I believe, suggests that while we value good music, we do not expect the pastor to oversee it. Being supportive is sufficient. You don't find me being the cantor on Sunday mornings, do you? No. Even though I sing like an angel, my job is to support. Finally, the results suggest the final 5 items, while admirable, are not necessarily key to our future. Friends, let us bear in mind, no pastor does everything well. We all have weaknesses along with our strengths. Are we willing to do without a particular item when the candidate excels at everything else? For instance, would we be happy with a pastor who seems to be perfect in every way except for pastoral care? Are we willing to provide the technical expertise needed to support a pastor who is exactly what we need, but who struggles with technology? Are we good with a pastor who can motivate, inspire, administer, and design a website, but who is a mediocre preacher? These are important considerations, and we trust our pastor nominating committee will consider them prayerfully and discuss them frankly with serious candidates. So in conclusion, these exercises are not blueprints for our future. Rather, they are a set of broad guides of what we as a congregation believe God wants us to invest in. Our understanding of the general direction in which we believe God wants us to go, and the kind of pastor we believe can best lead us on our way. We hope that these exercises will help our pastor nominating committee discern who will be the best pastor for our church. Sharing them with a prospective pastor would be a good way of learning what the pastor values and of helping both parties discern if this is a good fit. Before we come to our conclusion, I want to take a minute to say thank you to the wonderful team, Jolene Schry, Debby, Lorenz, Kristina, Arellano. Working with you has been a tremendous joy. It genuinely has. I have been impressed by your dedication and hard work over these last several months, and I appreciate your patience with me and your willingness to be led. You two quit laughing. I see that. I see what you're doing. Yes, and yeah. But also, not only were you willing to be led, but your eagerness to take responsibility and explore new opportunities. This team has gone down avenues that none other mission study I have been involved with has gone down. They have genuinely broken new ground. You have taught me a lot, and I thank you, and I have enjoyed being your pupil. And I want to say thank you to the congregation for being patient while we work through this process. The biggest mistake that congregations make is hurrying this process. Now, let me remind us all that this afternoon, we will email a full written copy of our report, which is something over 40 pages long, all right? And a word of great thanks to Kim Bratz for her miracle formatting that she did. It is the session's responsibility to review and approve. If the session approves the report at their next meeting, which will be, I believe, a week from tomorrow, is that right, Dave?
No, right.
Okay. Mr. Clerk ought to know. It's the one I always look to. If they approve the report and endorse it, then it will go to our Presbyterian's Committee on Ministry. Now, if the CLM approves it, and by the way, our CLM liaison is here today. Hillary, you want to stand up and wave? This is Hillary from Oshkosh, right? Hillary is a ruling elder at the Oshkosh Church. She will be the pastor nominating committee's support person while they are going through the process, okay? If the Committee on Ministry approves the report, then we as a congregation have permission to elect a pastor nominating committee. There will be more on that process when the time comes. But after the Presbyterian's Committee on Ministry has approved the mission study, we will make it available to everybody. I recommend that we put a link to it on our website, that the links go out in the regular emails. If you don't have email and you want a printed copy, we can get you one. But we encourage everybody to read it and enjoy it. Also, before I relinquish the microphone, I want to briefly address what is not included in this study. Obviously, we couldn't include everything or the report would be huge, but there's more to it than that. A congregational mission study is just that. It is a study. It contains a lot of hard data, things that can be surveyed and measured. And thus, things that are hard to measure tend to be left out. For instance, mission studies rarely delve into the psychology of a congregation. And yet, the psychology of a congregation can have an important influence on its mission and ministry. Our study, then, is not a psychological profile of our congregation. We have not explored our emotional ups and downs of the last 20 years. And yet, those ups and downs matter and should be known and shared. Not sharing them up front, keeping secrets, can cause problems later. A colleague of mine was once doing the usual premarital counseling that she was doing for a couple. And she asked one of her standard questions, have you seen each other's credit scores? Well, they had not. Did a little more question and answer and found out that one of those people getting married had over $20,000 in student debt that the other one didn't know about. How would you feel if your life partner came in with over $20,000 in debt that you had no clue about? That's quite some baggage to bring into a relationship and never mention it. We all have emotional baggage we carry with us. And we need to share that baggage with the people we love and who love us. And the same goes for pastors and churches. Being divorced does not prevent someone from being a pastor and doing good ministry. But how would you feel if you only learned after your pastor were installed and it started work that your pastor had been divorced or had an addiction issue? It's not the specific issue that matters so much as keeping it a secret. Secrets are the plaque in the bloodstream of a relationship. Secrets are the plaque in the bloodstream of a relationship. Too many of them can lead to serious harm. Pastors and churches need to share their background with each other. And so here are three things not included in the mission study that someone should be sure to share with our new pastor before they sign on the dotted line and move to Fond du Lac. First, staff conflict and problematic pastors. Our present staff gets along very well. I hasten to say that. Our present staff gets along extremely well. I'm privileged to be able to work with them. But I know there have been some very difficult staff issues in the past and misbehaving pastors in our past. They don't affect us much on a day-to-day basis, but I can sometimes feel them rumbling under the surface. Second, the Lombard Mennonite Peace Center and their work. I've heard several different reasons why they were called in, and there's probably some validity to all of them. Again, most days it's not an issue, but knowing about the conflicts and the LMPC's work can explain some of our concerns and some of our organizational structure. Speaking of which, organizational structure is our third item. Now, bear in mind, anytime you have two or more people working together, you have to have a bureaucracy. You just have to have it, and we have ours. We have three program teams, right? Serving, learning, loving. These teams are a product of the LMPC's work and came into being well before COVID, but I think COVID stunted their growth. My observation is the teams are still finding their footing. They are still figuring out where the boundaries are between each other. I hear a lot of, do we do this? Why doesn't another team do that? And who should be in charge of this project? If we are patient with each other and work at it, I believe in time the teams will figure themselves out and they will work as intended. Probably even more so after a new set of leaders comes in who have only ever known this arrangement. Our past history, staff and pastoral conflict, the LNPC and their work, our organizational structure. These are three things we do not directly address in our study, but which are nevertheless very important. And I recommend you discuss them with any serious candidates. Now, friends, let me say it once more. I've said it many times, and I believe it with all my heart. We are a good church. We do good ministry. I believe we will have plenty of viable candidates. We have some issues, yes. So does every other church in Christendom. By God's grace and our hard work, we are minimizing our difficulties and growing in faith and ministry together. And I am proud to be a part of this wonderful congregation. And now I am proud and happy to turn the microphone over to Kristina, who will bring our conclusion for the day.
For our final presentation this morning, I would like to share our recommendations to the pastor nominating committee. Based on our surveys and study, we recommend that our PNC seated pastor, who is a strong preacher and worship leader. This individual should be able to motivate us, encourage us, and increase the spirit of volunteerism in our church. Ideally, this person will have a strong interest in youth and young families. We believe that we need a pastor who can guide us out of our financial maze by increasing our generosity and helping us right-size our staffing for spiritual and physical growth. We firmly believe, and our study shows, that our motto is apt. Christians serving, learning, and loving. Over the course of our ministry, we've experienced many fires both physical and metaphorical. Flames, wars, depressions, recessions, and COVID have all threatened us, and yet we have come through them. With the prophet Isaiah, we hold fast to God's promise. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, though they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. We know we shall come through this time as well, because we are not traveling alone. God is with us. Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for your work in our congregation. Thank you for your love and the many blessings poured out on our church. Thank you for bringing leaders who speak into our lives and impart their wisdom. For Pastor Ken, who guided us through this congregational mission study. We acknowledge that we are not where we want to be as a church and fear dealing with some of the difficult decisions set before us. In our weakness, fill us with your strength and wisdom as we begin searching for a permanent pastor. Be with our session and COM as they review the Congregational Mission Study report. We thank you for filling us with the power of your Holy Spirit to accomplish these tasks. Be with us now as we leave church and go about our day. We ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you very much.